So thank you for joining us today. My name is Richard Taylor with Ideate Software. We're going to be joined here with Steve Beaver from Eagle Point and Karen Pierce from UNIFI, and they're going to do their introductions in a little bit. You can see, hi Karen, thanks for turning on your camera. And hi Steve, excellent. So today we're going to be talking about three different companies and sort of a series of solutions for the three key ingredients of a productive BIM strategy. So we're just going to go ahead and kick this off. And so I'm going to first start with Revit data management and health checks with Ideate Software. Then Steve's going to talk about e-learning and upskilling with Pinnacle series from Eagle Point. And then Karen is going to talk about BIM content management and project health with UNIFI. And we will leave some time, hopefully at the end, for some question and answers. The question panel is available if you want to type questions. We will be reviewing that. We've got some additional people that are going to be answering questions from the different representative companies. If we don't get to your questions, we will certainly follow up after the webinar. And this webinar is being recorded. That question is always asked. So yes, it will be available to you very shortly. So each one of us has a time solution. So I just hit the timer. Again, my name is Richard Taylor with Ideate Software. I'm located near Boston, Massachusetts. Actually, Karen is as well. And my background is in architecture, and I have over 22 years of Revit experience. I always tell people that I'm happy to connect and answer any technical questions on Ideate Software. You can reach me at richard.taylor@ideatesoftware.com. You can follow me on Twitter, and I'm more than happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn as well. So who is Ideate Software? Why is that a key ingredient of your BIM plan or your BIM strategy? Well, Ideate Software is all about simplifying Revit data management challenges. You know, we love Revit, and I think all of us here on the call today enjoy Revit, but we know that it doesn't solve every solution and that there are some workflow gaps. And so Ideate Software is here to fill some of those workflow gaps. So we are creating 6 add-on solutions to Revit, and those 6 solutions are available, the latest and greatest, on Revit 2020 through Revit 2023. We have our software in 6 languages and over 35 countries around the world. And we have been an Autodesk app developer for more than 25 years. And we're known for our great software, our great support, and a very simple and intuitive user interface. If you're not familiar with Ideate Software, that's our standard ribbon panel that you see there down below with all of our solutions. Now, our solutions can kind of be, I would say, put into 2 main categories. The first category is around Revit model productivity. And Ideate Sticky is our application that allows you to link in Excel, Word, and PDF data and keep that information up to date. So if the source document changes, the information can change in Revit. And then Ideate Apps is our productivity and efficiency solutions. There's actually 10 tools within Ideate Apps around, let's say, renumbering elements quickly and easily, understanding why something doesn't display in a specific view, a whole series of sheet and view tools. And then today I'm going to be showcasing a tool called Ideate Annotate. And Ideate Annotate, it's a little bit of an overlap tool. It's definitely productivity and efficiency, but it also kind of falls into our next category that I'm going to talk about, which is data management, project auditing, and model and data health. So our Ideate BIMlink solution allows you to extract information from the Revit model, send it to Excel, and be able to update and manipulate that data in Excel. Ideate Explorer is our model browser, allowing you to understand every single element in the Revit project. Our Ideate Style Manager allows you to understand all these different styles, object styles, line styles, filters, patterns, even parameters, and be able to review them, understand where they're being used, and create a very consistent and clean Revit model. And then finally, Ideate Automation is taking some of these workflows and these tools and allowing you to automate or script them so that you can run them at night or at a time that's convenient for you. So for instance, maybe you're extracting data from the Revit model, but instead of 1 Revit model, you have 10 models, and instead of 10, with those 10 models, you're extracting not 1 piece of data, but maybe, hundreds or thousands of pieces of data. Ideate Automation allows you to extract that and have a very repetitive and reliable outcome each time when you're doing that. So let's move right on to the products. And like I said, today we're going to be talking or focusing on sort of Revit model health and data management. So our first solution is called Ideate BIM Link. And BIM Link supports many workflows, but today I'm really going to be talking about the highlighted ones here: robust checking and information and large amounts of data. We ship with multiple, what we call link definitions, that allow you to extract information from the Revit model. So here I'm going to go ahead and start Ideate BIM Link. And again, this happens to be Revit 2023, but we support multiple Revit versions. When I select new, I have a series of what we call link definitions that are already defined. In this case, I'm going to check or select from the health check folder. I've got something called HC views. These properties about the views, for instance, the view template, the view count, the schedule type, are already sort of predefined. I'm now going to export that out to an Excel worksheet that we also include with Ideate BIM Link, called our health check folder, or health check file, excuse me. And so I'm going to export that. You can see now I can open up the file. I have what I call the raw data from Ideate BIM Link that's been exported: the view name, the title on sheet, the view template, all those parameters we talked about. But we also create a summary. Using pivot tables within Excel, we create a nice summary of all the different views and view types. We're going to see how this Excel folder can actually be expanded on with Ideate Automation. For the time being, though, right now I want to show you just some editing. I'm going to hide some of the columns here that I don't need. Column D is the view name, and I'm going to use another column here, or basically that AT, and I'm going to create a formula in Excel. And that's the great thing about Excel, is I can concatenate data, I can add information. So I basically say I want this to be uppercase, all of the view names, and I want it to have a prefix of CONF for conference. Once I get the formula the way I want, I can basically use Excel to pull down the data, and then I'm going to apply the values to column D, which is the sort of the live BIM Link data, if you will, or the raw data from BIM Link. Now that I have updated column D, I'm going to do the reverse process, which is basically take the health check Excel file and take that tab, which is the view tab, right? And I'm going to import the data. So I'm going to import that from HC, health check views, and I'm importing it, and now the change has been made. Or I should say the change hasn't been made, but the information has been updated. So notice over on the project browser now, all of the plan views have been updated to be uppercase, as well as have a prefix of CONF. So I just wanted to show you a quick round trip example using Ideate BIM Link. And again, we're going to expand on that in a moment. Our next solution is called Ideate Explorer. As I mentioned, it's our model browser. And there's so many workflows, but I don't have time to explain all of them, but I want to talk about warnings. Ideate Explorer, as I said, allows you to review every single element in the Revit model, but it also allows you to review warnings. And this is critical for a health check. When we do automation, we're going to be using the data here. So I just wanted to show you that you can switch over here to the entire project. You can look at the warnings tab, right? And this is going to show you the warnings, whether they're ranked high, medium, or low. You can also choose to have a warnings threshold, which we're going to talk about also on the health check. So I basically said that this file is allowed 1 megabyte or 1 warning per 1 megabyte of file. But in this case, I'm just using the interactive tools within Revit to be able to highlight the two floor slabs that conflict, and then I'm going to change their boundaries so they're not conflicting anymore, and then that is no longer a Revit warning. That warning has gone away within my dialog here. So Ideate Explorer allows you to review those warnings and be able to fix them very easily. Ideate Apps, as I said, is primarily productivity and efficiency, but there's a new tool that we just introduced in June called Ideate Annotate. And Ideate Annotate allows you to review and check annotations on sheets and views. So if I go to the Ideate Annotate tool here, similar to what you just saw with Ideate Explorer, right? I can browse elements, but in this case, I'm only browsing 2D annotative elements on the view. Or I could say the entire sheet or a number of views and sheets. I'm going to search for a particular tag, the toilet 123, and there's the room tag. I can double click and I can go right to the view that contains that particular tag. So I can review the information or browse the information as well as review. And I think the bigger sort of task at hand is to review clashes. And you see that I actually have 83 issues, and there's a number of 2D elements that clash with each other. For instance, this room tag and this door tag, right? And you can see the AV tech is on top of the door tag. So now I might want to move the door tag over to the right so that there is not a conflict. And then I'm going to refresh my issues list, and the issues will go from 83 down to 82, right? And I can continue to review information. I've got another tag here. If I go to my text notes, I've got two notes on top of one another, right? Because they're looking at the bounding box here. There's the double acting door and the stainless steel. But in this particular case, it's okay. I want to dismiss that issue because they're close enough, but they're not really conflicting. So I have the control of being able to set actually the limit for the clash detection, whether there are more or less clashes, as well as being able to fix these or say that they're not an issue. Other types of things, like what I just did there was an empty view tag or empty room tag, and now it was outside of the room. I wanted to place that in the room. There are elevation marks that have no elevations, that we might have zero link dimensions. So there's a number of things that the Ideate Annotate is showing me as far as issues. And that, again, that's going to be important when we talk about Ideate automation in a second here. So what I've done is kind of queued up real quickly Ideate BIM Link, Ideate Explorer, and Ideate Annotate, right, which is part of the Ideate apps. And I showed how you can sort of interactively use them within Revit. But Ideate Automation comes into play now when we can actually take those workflows and automate them. So Ideate Automation is a fairly new solution from Ideate Software. It's a scripting solution that allows us to take workflows from Ideate BIM Link, Ideate Explorer, Ideate Apps, as well as Ideate Style Manager, and allows you to automate those so those can be replicated again and again. And in fact, some of the scripts do not require Ideate Software, for instance, publishing PDF information, or maybe publishing a list of all of the families and the size of the families within the model. So this is Ideate Automation is a separate application. As you may notice from the ribbon that I'm showing there, it's not part of the ribbon because it's not inside of Revit. Actually, it's going to kick off Revit and run the script. So it's our sort of first desktop solution as opposed to integrated inside of Revit. And it is also, like our other solutions, supporting Revit 2020 through Revit 2023. So why should we use automation? Well, as I said, it allows you to save time by automating repetitive tasks, and you can also run those tasks, for instance, maybe in the evening. You can use the Windows Task Scheduler, right, to schedule those tasks at a convenient time. It might be 2 in the morning or something. So the key here is exporting key Revit model health data, as well as I highlighted here, even though I'm not going to show it today, the generating regular automated PDF exports, because I know that's really important. We have a number of videos, in fact, a fairly new video on exporting PDF information, so I would encourage you to review that. So today we're going to be looking at creating a health check report. You already saw a little bit of that earlier, but I'm going to show you how we can really expand on it. So this is Ideate Automation. It's kicked off from the desktop, right? And so I can manage files that are either Revit local models, or I can use ACC, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, or the BIM 360. And you'll notice I have a couple different hubs here. I'm going to switch my hub. When I look at the Revit models, it's automatically going to show the Revit version that is associated with that model. And it will kick off the appropriate Revit version when I ask it to do a particular task. So in this case, I'm going to select a health check task, right? It actually tells me that I need Ideate BIM Link, I need Ideate Explorer, and I need Ideate Annotate, part of Ideate Apps. I'm going to select a local model in this case. This is this conference center. I'm going to pick a model health export file, or a directory to send the information to. And that command that you see down below is a script that then could be cut and pasted into the Windows Task Scheduler. So no hands here. It's going to kick off Revit, in this case, the appropriate version of Revit, which is Revit 2023. And it's going to then not only extract the information like you saw me do in BIM link, right? I did the HC-views link definition, and I exported that to Excel. Well, it's going to export about 15 different link definitions to that Excel file. It's also going to export the warnings data that you saw in Ideate Explorer, and it's going to export the Ideate Annotate data that you saw when I was showing you the sheets and the issues. So all of this is being extracted to one Excel file that is our health check Excel file. And this is included with Ideate Automation. It's a little bit, I'd say, more robust than the one I showed that was included with Ideate BIM link. You see that there's summary information here, just like I showed you before. Summary of the categories and the information. We have a view summary, we have work sets and phasing, imports and in-place families. So all of this information was just extracted from that Revit model, right? And if I move over here to the right, you can see everything in blue is the extracted from the Ideate BIM link. Everything in green was from Ideate Explorer. Everything in orange was from Ideate Annotation. So again, the raw data from those products now were basically combined into this health check spreadsheet that then has a nice dashboard for you to use. So, we each of us have a very limited time today, so I wanted to make sure that I gave you a nice overview of some of the new health check and data management auditing features of Ideate Software. You can download a trial of all of these applications that you see there on the right through BIMlink, Explorer, Sticky, Style Manager, Apps, and Ideate Automation on our website. And we have some really nice promotional specials that are going on right now. Of course, on our website, we have a lot of information for help as well as support topics and videos. So with that, with maybe 1 minute over, Steve, and I also want to make a point, since I mentioned about the videos, all of our content available that's available through Ideate Software is also available through EaglePoint. We're very proud of our relationship that we have with EaglePoint for maintaining that learning data on their portal. And with that, I'd like to switch you over to you, Steve.
Absolutely, yeah, thanks, Richard. Great stuff there from Ideate as always. Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Beaver. So to kind of change gears here a little bit, what we're going to be talking about today is the importance of learning when it comes to your BIM strategy. As we were discussing about participating in this webinar, we were thinking about what are the key ingredients to a successful BIM strategy, and at EaglePoint, our common conclusion was learning. When it comes to BIM strategy, what goes into that? Well, technology goes into that, of course. People go into that, processes and procedures all go into that. And one key ingredient has to be learning, or else everything kind of falls apart. So we're going to unpack learning today and unpack how important learning is for the AEC community, as well as some of the challenges that people run into when adopting a learning strategy. Now, before I go into that though, let me introduce myself here, if I can get my slides to work. So a little bit about me. I've been in the AEC space now for about 16 years. My education comes from the civil engineering side of the world, but really my passion lies in the technology. Way back when I first got my hands onto AutoCAD, of the time there, I couldn't let it go. I loved it. Once the verticals started coming out with Revit and Civil 3D and the others, I just loved the technology. And then my passions evolved over the last probably 10 years or so, where my passion really is helping other users, other people, other organizations use the technology more efficiently. There's so much power in all of this technology. I mean, Richard just showed a lot of power there with the Ideate tools. There's so much power, and unfortunately, most of it goes to waste. There's a lot of untapped power inside of these resources. We here at EaglePoint, we really want to unleash that and help the AEC world leverage that power And that's why we created Pinnacle Series some number of years ago. So Eagle Point Software is the organization that I work with. I'm Chief Operating Officer. We created Pinnacle Series back in 2006 timeframe. And if you haven't heard of Pinnacle Series yet, it's the leading AEC e-learning solution. We have about 500,000 or so users around the world leveraging Pinnacle Series to upskill and teach and educate their staff around AEC technologies, processes, procedures, etc. Now, let's unpack this a little bit further, though. Why is learning so important? And very few people are going to question me on that. Most business leaders realize, learning's important. That's kind of a given, but it's so underinvested into. So I want to really kind of, show some of the reasons why it's so important and why we shouldn't underinvest in it. We need to start investing more into it. And there's a handful of different reasons here. And we're going to kind of work our way down that right list there. And then we're going to start with this concept of employee retention. Now, you might question, why are we talking about employee retention when we're really talking about BIM strategies and ingredients that go into BIM strategies? Well, one of the main things in my mind that allows an organization to successfully adopt BIM and really excel in it is the people. It's the people that really are doing these things. So employee retention is paramount. And as we all kind of hear about in the news and kind of experience in everyday life now, employee retention is hard. Finding talent out there, finding good designers, architects, skilled people to do this work is getting harder every single day. And we're not the only industry that's running into this problem. So employee retention is crucial. And a lot of organizations are trying to figure out ways to improve their employee retention, keeping people working for them and happy working for them. And learning and development is a key part of that. It needs to be a key part of that. If you're investing in your people through learning and development, your people will be happier, they will stay longer. Just one data point on this. It was an interesting survey study that was done by LinkedIn a little while back, but what it found was 94% of employees would stay longer at an organization if they were provided learning opportunities, learning and development opportunities. 94% of the people would stay longer if they were being invested in around learning. So that's one of the reasons why learning is so important. Now, bringing it a little bit closer to home, if you will, closer to the AEC world that we all live and breathe in, the next topic is reducing rework. Just about all of us have ran into the situation where we're at the last few, weeks of a project. The deadline is coming up quickly. We're almost done. And then what happens? A giant wrinkle, a giant snag comes into this project that requires so much extra work, burning the midnight oil and really fixing a problem that started months ago. How often is it when we run into these problems, a week ago, a month ago, something went wrong with the project. Somebody might have just made an error. Somebody might have not followed a company standard or a procedure appropriately. They might have used the technology wrong, mistakenly, and that caused a huge problem to boil up over time until it's almost too late. And then budgets go out the window. People are working really late at night just to get the thing done. It happens way, way too often. And in many of those cases, the culprit here is learning. That person, that team that did something wrong, likely they didn't follow the right procedure because they weren't taught it appropriately, or they were taught it once and they were never re-educated on it on an ongoing basis. So if you want to reduce the rework problem that a lot of organizations have, learning is something that you should look into. Third, I mentioned this just briefly a moment ago, but corporate standards. Nowadays, virtually all firms have corporate standards of some sort, They're documented in some way. They might be shared on like SharePoint or an intranet site or somewhere. Some organizations do better at keeping it up to date than others. But what rarely happens is actually using the corporate standards. And when we're thinking about corporate standards, that's very important when it comes to BIM processes and BIM procedures. And in my mind, they're becoming almost one and the same there in a lot of cases. So yes, we need to document those standards, but we need to teach people how to use those standards. And it can't just be a one-time learning event. You can't just share your standard with somebody and say, now go use them. It has to be an ongoing thing, ongoing communication, ongoing education. And then finally this concept of digital transformation. We've all heard that term thousands of times. It's a buzzword, but it's also the world that we live in. You know, everything is going through a digital transformation now, and that's not going to stop in the foreseeable future. New technologies are going to come on board, new concepts from BIM to digital twins to AR, VR, et cetera. That's never going to stop. One thing that people really underinvest in, though, is the learning component of this. We all know that we have to subscribe or invest in technology to go through digital transformations, but you also need to invest in the people, invest in learning and teaching so that the tools, procedures are followed and used appropriately. So that's why learning is so important. And again, very rarely is a business leader going to come to me and say to me, no, I don't believe in teaching and training my people. Very rarely are people going to say that, but more often than not, people have a hard time adopting and implementing a successful learning strategy. And learning strategies take all different shapes and sizes. Small firms are going to have a much more rudimentary basic learning strategy. Large organizations that have offices all across the world are going to have a more complex learning strategy. But there's still challenges no matter how big or small you are. So what I wanted to do now is really just kind of explore with you some of the big hurdles that AEC firms run into when adopting a learning strategy. So we're going to count down the top 5 here. We're going to end on the biggest hurdle, and we're going to talk about some others first. So the first hurdle that people have to get over, organizations have to get over, is the lack of a central learning platform. When you're first going into learning and you say, yes, I want to provide a learning strategy for my people, many times people think, okay, let's build it ourselves. We can publish some learning material that we created, our corporate standards, on an intranet site or a SharePoint site. We can kind of link people out to YouTube or maybe LinkedIn Learning for learning out there and all that. But they don't have a central platform. And that's where adoption struggles right away, is if you don't have one place to get access to all this learning, people don't know where to go, the adoption struggles there. And then also you don't have a place to track this as well. If you want to implement a good strategy, you have to hold people accountable and have a place for tracking all of this. Secondly, we come from a very niche industry, I'll say. I'm very proud of being a part of the AEC world. I hope you're proud of it as well. We do a lot of great things in this industry, and we have a lot of specialties in this industry. When organizations go out and want to invest in a learning platform, an LMS, an LXP, oftentimes that results in a horizontal solution, a solution that's also used for banking, it's used for healthcare, it's used for other industries, and all of those lack a key ingredient, content. We use specialty tools. Richard talked before about Ideate and Revit, and think about the other tools out there. We use a lot of technology that requires training and requires learning. That content is hard to come by. So not having that content is going to cause any learning strategy in the AEC world to struggle right away, because organizations can't build their own content. You don't have the time or resources to do that. It's foolish to think that you can invest and create that content and keep it up to date as technology changes. So you need to invest in something that has content already available that you can take and then customize if you would like to. Now, the next two here, I'm going to kind of bring up at the same time. They kind of go hand in hand to a certain degree. When you're adopting and implementing a new learning strategy, there's change that goes into this. From the manager's point of view, whether there's a L&D lead or project managers or people managers, executives, there has to be constant communication down to the people so that they are encouraged to get that learning. They're held accountable to do it as well. So they're given assignments and are held to some goals that are established for them. So the management, the executive leadership inside of these organizations, you need to really kind of communicate and focus in on that strategy. It takes work. It takes time to change your organization, and implementing a learning strategy requires a lot of change, a change to procedures, a change to the culture in general. And then that change comes all the way down to the production staff as well. It takes a lot for production staff, people to change and change in a positive way. So getting them to take that time to do the learning requires change. Getting them used to going out and taking some learning courses, every week or every other week, that requires change. And change management is a big key to this. Implementing a learning strategy across a large organization, you should expect a large change management project to come with that. And then finally, time. It's always the problem. It's always the biggest challenge for organization is providing the staff the time to actually consume the training, consume the learning, get educated. It's all well and good to say that we want to train our people and educate our people and provide them learning and development opportunities. It's good to say that, but you have to provide the time as well. And here I'm talking about overhead time, and that's always a struggle, right? Billable hours is always a premium. It's always important to, have that project work, top priority. And we all know why. Bills have to be paid, budgets have to be met, profits need to be made. That does make sense. But how do we better ourselves if we're not also investing the time to improve our staff? So that's something that we talk to our customers about all the time, is building in the time in your learning strategy so the actual staff can take the learning, and also various people across the organization can have time to create learning, customize learning, hold people accountable to that learning. So what I want you to think about is, we talked about how important learning is, and very few people are going to question that. We also talked about the challenges of that, of those learning strategies, and where people sometimes, fall short in their learning strategies. What I'd like you to do is think about your organization. Think about your organization's learning strategy. What is being done? What might not be being done? How can it be better in the future? And if you think about that, and if you uncover any gaps in that strategy that you and your firm would like to, look at and explore, I would encourage you, take a look at Pinnacle Series. That's who we are. Eagle Point Software provides the Pinnacle Series solution to the AEC community. And we've built in a lot of things into this solution to help with those 5 hurdles that are so challenging to overcome. Number 1, it's a central platform where all learning can go into. Number 2, we have an extensive library of AEC content. We have so much learning content around Revit. As Richard said, we have learning content about Ideate and other technologies that are commonly used in the AEC world. And it goes beyond just technology. We have global BIM standards documented in here as well, so we can educate people on that. And then lastly, the very first, I'll say, bullet on this slide says personalized learning. It always comes back to time. Time investment is such a big struggle. We've built in a very unique method of being able to identify individuals' skills gaps, provide a personalized training course automatically to them that's targeted at those skills gaps, and do it in a fraction of the time of traditional training or of traditional e-learning for that matter. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to take a look at personalized learning. So that's enough for me. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the learning concept of AEC. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Karen Pierce from UNIFI Labs. Karen, you're up.
Thanks, Steve. So Steve and Richard both actually shared a lot of information with me that I have actually not seen much in the past. So I have known Richard for years, I've known Ideate for years, and I've just started getting acquainted with Eagle Point, and I gotta say, I've even learned something new, so my hat's off to you guys. It's a tough act to follow. But a little bit about me. I have been working in the industry for about 10 years. I've got my first start was actually on the electrical side. So I became very familiar with the MEP side of things, but as I really was focused on efficiencies and productivity, I got more and more into all different types of discipline, including architecture. So got into working in BIM management. I've done a bit of consulting, as well as, of course, being a training specialist for Revit in the past and here at UNIFI. So here at UNIFI, I've been with UNIFI now for about 3 years. Over those 3 years, we really built a customer success team. So it's great to see that Steve offers that there at Pinnacle, and of course, Ideate does as well. Customer success is at the heart of what we do. None of us want to be just another tool in your BIM strategy, but be your partner. And here at UNIFI, we really work to journey with our partners, our customers. I've onboarded hundreds of our customers here, and I've really focused on adoption and strategy. While we all really do tend to have a lot of the same issues, we're all very unique in the types of work that we do, and of course, the culture of the people themselves. So now that you've heard about me, let's hear more a little bit, of course, about UNIFI and who we are here. We are the industry-leading cloud-based BIM content management. We also do more than that with our project health that we offer here. And overall, what we see is that we're saving users over 80 hours annually. What would you do with an extra 2 weeks of vacation time, right? So you can actually personalize this. So I put the website here so you can kind of follow along with unifilabs.com/ROI. A lot of people tend to think that I need to be a big company in order to take advantage of the cost savings with UNIFI, and that's just not true. Everything with productivity starts with the user itself. So what I mean by that is even if you're a firm of just 10 people and you're looking for content twice a day, what that means is you can actually save 40 hours. So you can tell there's still a significant return on investment no matter what your firm size is. And getting started, just like these 3 key ingredients here today, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. So the first step we take our customers through is getting started, and that gets started with adding your users. Who is it that needs to access your content? So we make that easy with being able to manage those users by email addresses, names, and getting them set up with groups, because groups can be very easily then tied to libraries, and libraries will be permissions based. So we have some customers that keep everything in one bucket, if you will, but others that might be perhaps multidisciplinary, multi-regional. Again, we work with customers of all shapes and sizes, but we make it easy to get started. So then simply all you have to do is upload content. So content can be simply dragged and dropped from your existing file folder system, or we do offer, of course, the ability to export content straight out of projects. So even if you're new with your Revit journey and you're still working to build that library, UNIFI still has a place for you so that you can just export content from those projects you've done in the past and gradually work to build that library. And then start searching. So something you'll actually see here in the heading is that I've looked for a couch, but the content that I'm finding all have the term sofa in it. So UNIFI is breaking free from that file folder system where you might be looking for content by a file name or a folder name, but I'm using tags here to kind of act as synonyms. So part of what we do here at UNIFI as part of your onboarding process is that we'll talk through tagging strategies with you. A lot of our customers tag by division number, spec. We can also tag by keynotes, perhaps. So there's a little bit of a trick to that, but it's as easy as just searching for content by that parameter value. All right, guys, so I like to challenge myself here and depend upon technology a little heavily, but I do want to kind of have you guys see it for yourself in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and pull open UNIFI. And I've got a Revit project here as well. So now that UNIFI is open, quick note here, I'm on the notifications page by default. So all you admins out there, this is a great landing spot for you because you'll be able to review uploads and think of these as upload requests, because if you're a small firm, you perhaps don't have time for that dedicated BIM manager. So you can actually ask your staff to upload that content that they need that otherwise they probably copy from project to project. And then you'll be able to sort of approve or reject it, or maybe not even have an approval process in place and have something like a sandbox. So people can freely commit to it and just go ahead and start sharing content immediately. Now, for everyone else, they just land right here on search. So this functions very much like you would expect, where I can go ahead and start looking for content. Now, I've got a project here that's a bit of a office layout, so I want some perhaps workstations here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start looking for a workstation. And just like that, I've got results. So UNIFI is able to go ahead and show preview images, of course, automatically with this content here. And preview images are going to work across a variety of Revit families. So furniture systems I have here. I even have a schedule. So that does mean UNIFI isn't just storing those pieces of content you can actually save on the file folder system, but a lot of that content that, once again, does tend to get harvested from past projects, such as schedules, drafting views, materials, fill patterns. We can even store all types of different sheets. So lots and lots here, and inserting content, even this workstation schedule, is as easy as just clicking on that icon to go ahead and insert it. Now, I have actually inserted it into a different Revit model, one that you can't see on the screen here, but if I drag and drop that over, you should be able to go ahead and see it now. Now, what I wanted to also kind of give you a chance to see is that I did have multiple Revit programs open. So while this would make my BIM manager self kind of shudder, what we can do is connect to multiple Revit projects at the same time. And then inserting, we are actually looking for content across different versions of Revit even. So one of the most powerful features of UNIFI we have here is that when I click on the name of a piece of content, and this one actually came from one of our manufacturer channels, so I'll circle back and talk on that in just a moment here. But I'm able to view family types, parameter information, and best yet, my file history here for this piece of content. So this content has certainly been around for a while, all the way back in 2012, but UNIFI is automatically upgrading that content for you. So you no longer have to put content into different Revit file folders and have those users manually navigate or take that time, script that out every year in order to go ahead and copy those files from one version to another. And as we speak a little bit about versioning, content doesn't in fact always stay the same, of course, right? So I'm going to go ahead and look for another piece of content here. And I do have just a few too many results. I am looking for something very specific. So notice the all sources that I have here. All sources, company libraries, it doesn't just stop there for us. What we also have here is the ability to see content across shared libraries, so other customers with UNIFI subscriptions. This is great for a number of the owner clients that we work with to communicate with their AORs, but we also have manufacturer content available. So all of this content comes from, a vetted source. It all goes through our content audit, so more on that in just a few minutes here. But we also provide all of that Revit content right out of the box for you. So again, if you're building up that library, you don't have to worry about transferring over content that you may need change, because you could just go ahead and subscribe to it, and you're ready to work with UNIFI once again, just right out of the box here. A few other items I did want to make sure we go ahead and talk about, though, are the really productivity enhancements of saved searches. So searching for contents with a single term is easy enough, but search can get complex, especially if you're looking for content according to specific standards. Maybe you're also looking to just kick off a project more quickly. So with something like saved searches, I can go ahead and create that project kickoff set, where if I'm going to go ahead and go after just some common cabinetry, I can go ahead and select that, and I've got everything I need in as few as 3 clicks. Now with UNIFI, you saw how easy it is to insert, single click, not too bad, but what if I know I need this piece of content, this piece, and that piece? Well, selecting all of that is just as easy as pushing Control, and then I right click and I'm able to batch insert my content. So very powerful here, really works quite quick and efficiently. So you can see just again, real time, batch insert. It's going to go ahead and communicate with Revit, and then I'll be ready to insert that content. It does, of course, sometimes hang up a little bit, so I tend to have the patience of a 2-year-old. Everybody seems to know that, who knows me well, but I hit escape, I'll go back to UNIFI, and I can batch insert that once again here. Now, content, as I mentioned, isn't static. I mentioned a bit about our versioning capabilities here, but what if content, you're not in charge of it? You know, maybe you're not fixing it or something else along those lines. So an end user can actually request an update to an existing piece of content. This goes to any admins that are responsible for that library, and then they'll be able to go ahead and take it completely through the process. That does also appear here on that notifications page that I started with. So I can go ahead and simply double click to open up that requested file. It is in progress, so somebody's already picked it up, so those files and folders can be dragged right through here. The design documents, by the way, are also attached, so nothing's more powerful than getting, of course, a preview image or spec sheet in order to convey that design intent or that modification. But in case there are any other questions here, the discussion board is able to go ahead and communicate, says, hey, I might be missing that spec sheet, for example, or can you tell me a little bit more about what you're specifically requiring? So again, all information is in one place. And for those of you that like to always track what they do, don't worry about that because we never delete anything that's been completed or rejected over time. We just simply hide it from this view. So use that status filter. You can see items and of course change dates as needed. Works great copy paste, but we are working on enhancements to things like content request, and I'll be giving you a few teasers right at the very end, guys, on that. All right, so back to now that I've survived the live demo, I'm going to go ahead and talk about a few other offerings we have. So one of those is project analytics. Now, what's pretty cool about this is that it's reviewing live model data. So anytime a user syncs on a model that's been opted in, so that means we're not going to look at your data unless you tell us it's okay, but we're going to be able to see things like particular Revit warnings, sync times, that minor version across Revit. So one great thing that Richard was talking about is being able to see those BIM 360 projects and what year they're in. We'll be able to take a look at that specific minor version, and for BIM 360 projects, that's really, really going to be critical. The compare changes feature is also pretty powerful. So if you ever are wondering, hey, who deleted a whole bunch of drafting views? It happened about this time. We'll just simply hop into the project analytics portal and you'll be able to check that out. Now, project health does start with the quality of the content itself. So I alluded to this a little bit when I spoke briefly about the manufacturer content we offer here, but with our content audit, we can provide that same service for you. So this is going to be collecting data about families. And this data is everything from imported CAD, file size, parameter data, type information. So the best way to do this is to once again torture myself with the aspect here of a live demo. So the content audit is actually run by us on our side. So again, we're kind of working to make content analytics a feature of ours in the future. But for now, this content audit is data that we extract out of your libraries and we push it into a Power BI report. So Power BI is something that is, of course, going to be specific. Power BI is a free application you can download from Microsoft. You don't really need a lot of training in order to use it, at least not to manipulate it. Because if you were curious about perhaps file size, maybe you have identified that as one of your priorities to fix your content, this slider bar is going to make it very easy for you to go ahead and automatically adjust that. And if you decide that that television table is what you're focused on, you can see that this lives in 3 different libraries. Come back here to UNIFI. Let's take a look for that television. And now we'll be able to identify, yep, this is the exact same family, and right click, download it, and then you'll be able to go ahead and start working with it in Revit. Now, because I do have Revit open, I could simply open it in the family editor, make those changes, and then re-upload. And we tend to sell these in packs of 2. We do have some great specials as well if you haven't got UNIFI yet and you're interested, because once you go ahead and process the content audit the first time, you'll be able to fix it, and then we're happy to run it for you again so you can do a compare and before, after. All right, so I know we're running tight on time. So I have just that last little tidbit left for you that I promised. So what's next for us here? So we have been hard at work on what we're calling V4. So our current build is 395. And what V4 promises is that we're looking to actually unify our desktop and our web portal applications together. So you saw a little bit about both of those. And really what we're doing is completely redesigning our search and filter system. So search is great now, but we are really working to make it even better. And part of that is really resulting in display configuration. So light and dark mode, as you can see here on the screen, and even introducing 3D previews. So lots of new features are coming to V4. We're getting super excited about that, as we got performance boosts, and then saving one of the best for last is that UNIFI is a cloud-based content system that is actually stored on AWS servers. Those servers are located stateside in Oregon, but we have international clients that would love for us to be able to store their data in the EU, UK, and even the Australian regions to just ensure that specific data requirements are being met, as well as, of course, just ensuring that speed and efficiency is as fast as possible. So with that, I want to just thank you guys. Please reach out if you'd like to schedule any sort of custom demonstration. That'll be at sales or support at, and Richard, back over to you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Steve. Both were excellent. Let me just make sure I'm gonna, like you said, bring the presenter back. So we're showing the screen, and we do have some questions, and I'm gonna actually start with you, Karen, since you were the most recent here. And so just a second here, if I get I've got too many screens going on here. There was a question about the content and where is the content stored? And I think you kind of mentioned that it's cloud content, but maybe you could talk specifically about where the content libraries are stored.
Yes, absolutely. So the content libraries are going to be stored on our servers. So they are AWS servers located in Oregon. The content is your content, by the way. So just as for any clarity that's needed, your libraries are your libraries. We take data security here very seriously.
And adding to that, there was a question from Kyle about does UNIFI offer any project analytics for the way of crash diagnostics? I know I'll kind of start with this. I know for Ideate Software on our health check, we're not offering anything like that for diagnostics, but I don't know if UNIFI would on their dashboard settings.
Not at this time, but part of those V4 features I was just mentioning very briefly at the end. We have a lot of exciting things planned for project analytics, I would say, and crashes is definitely at the top of our list.
Yeah, and I think both Ideate Software and UNIFI are offering sort of this dashboard approach for health checks, and they really, you can combine them, and they're actually kind of gathering different data. And definitely the UNIFI is more sort of content focused in some ways.
Absolutely.
Which is excellent.
Right, so versioning, for example, on that one specifically. So if you've got version 4 loaded in your UNIFI library, but version 3 exists in your project, you'll be able to see that information.
Excellent. And Steve, a question for you. You mentioned that time is the most challenging aspect of having a good learning strategy. How much learning time is the right amount for your production staff?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a hard question to answer because it really depends on the firm, and every firm is going to have probably a different approach to things. One of the things we did do, though, here at Eagle Point about 2 or 3 months ago is we did a small, I'll say informal survey of our customer base, some of our larger customers, and asked them that same question. We asked them, how much time do you put into overhead time for your production staff to use? And what we got back was it's all across the board, from no time to some time during onboarding of a new staff, and then a little bit of time going forward. One of the things that we got to a little bit of a norm anyways was 2 hours a week. So if you could set aside ongoing 2 hours per week, and it doesn't have to be every single week, 4 hours every other week or so, that's enough time that we've uncovered where your staff feels appreciated. They feel like they're invested in. Still gives you enough time to learn some new tricks or new tools or new procedures that you need to follow. But it's not taking away too much from billable hours, which is obviously the premium. So my recommendation would be 2 hours per week would be a good starting point.
Excellent, thanks. And also another question that came in, you mentioned that the Pinnacle series was preloaded with AEC learning content. How do you keep it up to date as new technologies and new versions are released? And I guess I might say a little bit about Ideate Software there, because I know we're working with you very closely to make sure that our content is the latest and greatest.
Yeah, absolutely. The simple answer to your question is yes. So as we think about Ideate, you think about Revit as a couple of examples. Depending on who created the content, and in the case of Revit, we created all of that content here at Eagle Point with certified experts, kind of working in tandem with Autodesk. We keep that content up to date every time Revit gets updated, whether it's a minor version or whether it's an annual release. When you think about the cloud-based applications like the ACC Build and BIM 360, that's updated more regularly by Autodesk or more often by Autodesk, we do our best to keep that content up to date as soon as those releases come out. There's a little bit of a lag time because we have to produce that content, but we try to get it out there within 30, 60 days of any of those releases. And one of the other things that was kind of coming to my mind as Karen was talking earlier, I use the term content very loosely. Karen's using the term content, for her purposes, and just to clear up any confusion, if there's any out there, the content that I'm referring to is learning content, training content, courses, videos, documentation, whereas Karen is obviously talking about Revit content, families, and things like that. So,
excellent. And a question for Karen. I know this is going to be really difficult, but what's the #1 feature of UNIFI that would boost productivity?
I would say that auto upgrading feature I talked about today, without needing to constantly keep track of the latest version for your Revit families, because they can corrupt if you're trying to upgrade them on demand. It's not often, but it certainly does happen, causing instability in a project that we all know has so many other reasons to be unstable, right, Richard?
Exactly.
So that one alone, and the versioning really is our powerhouse.
Well, great. Well, I have about 2 minutes left. I just want to kind of wrap up and just say that I hope this has whetted your appetite about creating a productive BIM strategy at your firm. And you can find out more information on all of our respective websites for Eagle Point, for Ideate Software, and for UNIFI. I know we all have a lot of, I'll call it content. Oh, I can't see the screen. Content in air quotes. We have a lot of information, I'll say, not content. Information on, supported features, like I said, help content and so forth for all of our websites. So I would encourage you to do a little research, and if you have any additional questions, please feel free to type those questions. I think we asked most of the questions, or answered most of the questions. Actually, there was here one for Ideate Software, which was the earliest version for Ideate Annotate that I showed. We typically at Ideate Software will go back multiple versions, but in the case of Ideate Annotate, since it was a brand new tool within the Ideate apps, we just released it in June 2022. So that means it's just the last 4 releases of Revit. So we're supporting with our most current June 2022 release, Revit 2020, 21, 22, and 23. So I know that's the Revit versions, and the calendar years are always a little bit confusing, but that's the current supported Revit versions for Ideate Annotate. And like I said, please follow up with any additional technical questions for all of us. I want to thank Steve Beaver. I want to thank Karen Pierce for being available. They're fantastic, and I hope this has been informative and given you some thoughts for what actually makes up a good productive BIM strategy and what are the important ingredients for that. So with that, my clock just turned to 3 o'clock on the East Coast of the USA, so exactly on time. Again, I want to thank Steve. I want to thank Karen. You were both fantastic. And I appreciate everyone's time and attention this afternoon on the presentation. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.